Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City. Millions of people have watched Ashton Kutcher act funny in movies, play a cute guy, or talk about computers and money. But on a hot spring morning in a New York courtroom, that same man walked in not as a famous person, but as someone who had to tell what he knew about one of the most shocking celebrity trials ever. Sean Diddy Combs was in big trouble with the law for really bad things like hurting people and running a criminal gang. Kutcher used to hang out with Diddy and his famous Hollywood friends, so he had no choice but to come to court and tell what he knew. The room got super quiet, and then Ashton started talking. What he said next made everyone's jaws drop. Kutcher wasn't just there to say, "I'm not like Diddy." He was there to tell a secret that nobody saw coming. Something shocking, like when a friend betrays you, and a secret that might change everything. This is the story of when Ashton Kutcher became a witness. This is what happened the day he finally told the truth. The feeling in the courtroom was really tense, even more than usual for a case that already had tons of crazy news. But when Ashton Kutcher was called to sit in the witness chair on day 9 of the trial against Sean Diddy Combs, the whole room felt different. There was a weird kind of silence. Kutcher didn't walk in like a Hollywood star used to fancy red carpets and fans screaming. He walked in like a guy who was trapped. His tie was pulled tight, his forehead was sweaty, and his eyes kept looking around for a way out that wasn't there. Because for the first time, he wasn't on a movie set. He was promising to tell the truth in court. The news people had been guessing for weeks that Kutcher's name might come up. Years of photos, business deals, and partying with Combs had come back up after Diddy got arrested. Ashton's team had been working really hard to make the timeline look better, but no amount of spinning could change what the prosecutors had found. Kutcher's name showed up in letters, security lists, money records, and worst of all, in some videos taken from Diddy's house. "Ashton Kutcher," the prosecutor started, "do you know what this picture is?" Kutcher took one quick look at the screen. The picture was blurry, but it was definitely him. Shirt a little unbuttoned, drink in his hand, laughing in a dark room. Around him were other faces that were blurred out to keep them private. "I do," he said, swallowing hard. "That was in 2009 at Diddy's white party." That was the first of many times he said, "Yes, that's me." And as he kept talking, his carefully built public image started to fall apart. Kutcher spoke calmly at first, but his voice was shaking a little. "I was friends with him," he said about Combs. "I looked up to him, but there were things I saw, things I didn't want to think about." He explained how the so-called new Hollywood Rat Pack got started. Diddy himself, Danny Masterson, and Wilmer Valderrama. At first it was just partying, then it became business, then it became something else. "There was a moment when things changed," Kutcher said. "It went from private parties to what I'd call planned experiences, and I didn't ask enough questions." The prosecutor asked if he had ever seen anything illegal happen. Kutcher stopped talking for a moment. "I didn't know what I was seeing back then. That's what I keep telling myself. But I know better now." He admitted that Combs often had a special team working in the back rooms, people who took away phones, told guests where to go, and made people sign papers saying they wouldn't talk about what happened. Ashton said that even he had signed lots of those papers over the years. "I just thought that was normal," he said. "Everyone did it." But then came the recordings. The court played audio recorded during a party in 2013 at one of Diddy's houses. You could hear music and laughter, then Ashton's voice. "I don't think we should be filming this. Seriously, this is too much." Someone else said back, "Relax, it's all taken care of. They already signed." The prosecutor turned to Ashton. "Who were you talking about?" He waited, looking over at Diddy, who sat with no expression at the table where the people in trouble sit. "Guests," Ashton finally said. Some were models, some weren't. But they weren't told what was really going to happen. Not really. By the end of part 1, Ashton's testimony wasn't just about Diddy. It was about being part of something wrong, about a culture where staying quiet was rewarded and asking questions got you in trouble. It became clear that Kutcher had once been someone who stayed quiet, but now in front of a judge and jury, he was trying to be someone who tells the truth. Ashton kept talking into the afternoon, this time telling about the famous years of the New Hollywood Rat Pack. "It was me, Diddy, Danny Masterson, and Wilmer Valderrama," he said. "We called it a new kind of brotherhood, but looking back, it was like a machine." He told stories that sounded cool at the time. Private jets to secret places, all-night parties in huge houses with no clocks or windows. But these stories now sounded scary. There were whole rooms at those parties where only certain people could go in, Ashton said. "You had to be approved. I didn't ask who was doing the approving." The prosecutor pushed him. "Did he ever see anything illegal? Anything that hurt people?" Ashton let out a big breath. "Not with my own eyes," he said. "But I heard things, and I ignored what I heard. I laughed things off. I told myself it was just rumors." He told about one thing that happened on a private boat party in 2012. Diddy brought out a group of young women. Most of them were models or internet-famous people. He said they've all signed papers. "You're safe." I remember laughing. I shouldn't have. He talked about how the Rat Pack friends started acting different. Danny got darker, he said, talking about Masterson. More paranoid, more controlling. Diddy and Danny were really close during that time. The court showed video from Diddy's 2009 white party that Kutcher helped host. "That was my idea," he admitted. "We were saying it was for charity on the outside, but behind the scenes I think we were promoting something else completely." He told the court that as time went on, even he started keeping secrets. "You don't become successful in Hollywood without learning when to shut up. I was making millions. I had a brand, and I didn't want to ruin that." He also explained how guests who asked too many questions weren't invited back. There was a list of people to invite and a list of people to never invite again. "You don't cross Sean Combs." Everyone knew that. He even talked about a scary moment with a female guest and another celebrity whose name was hidden during court testimony. "I asked if she was okay. She said, 'They told me not to talk.' That stuck with me." Ashton started to get teary-eyed. "I'm here because I was part of the circle, and I saw enough to know something was wrong, and I didn't do enough to stop it." The people watching sat in shocked silence. Ashton Kutcher, who everyone saw as the nice, funny guy, the smart computer, investor, the loving husband, was now peeling back layers of a Hollywood secret that few people dared to talk about. And it was only getting darker. Kutcher's testimony changed from Hollywood gossip to directly exposing secrets. The word freak-off, which had been rumored on industry blogs and anonymous posts, became part of the courtroom talk. "What's a freak-off?" the prosecutor asked. Ashton hesitated. It's an event Diddy would host," he said. "Private, exclusive, phones taken away, guests blindfolded sometimes. It was presented like performance art, but it wasn't. Not really." He described how he was invited to his first one in 2005. "I thought it was a theme party," he said. "I brought a date. Within 30 minutes, I regretted coming." He wouldn't describe everything he saw, but he did say this. There were hidden cameras. There were people who looked terrified. There were rooms you didn't walk into unless someone tapped your shoulder. The prosecutor brought up a detail from a computer they took from someone's house. Ashton's name was on a digital guest list tagged green light. "It meant I was trusted," he said. "I don't know what I did to earn that, but I knew what it meant. I could go anywhere." He also described being given documents to sign, papers promising not to talk, written not just for guests but for famous entertainers, security teams, and caterers. "The paper I signed in 2010 was 28 pages long," he said. "I signed it anyway." The courtroom listened as Ashton explained how hard it was to step away. "You're not just backing out of a party," he said. "You're backing out of a network, a power structure, a system." He remembered one moment in 2014 when he tried to stop going. "I told Diddy I was done, that it wasn't for me anymore. And he said, 'You don't quit. You're in or you're out forever.'" That same week, Ashton claimed, 3 business deals mysteriously fell through. "I got a call from a mutual friend who said, 'You made someone nervous.'" Ashton ended with a scary admission. "I was afraid, not just for my career but for my family. Diddy had reach and people don't understand. He didn't need to raise his voice. All he had to do was stop returning your calls. That was enough to destroy someone." And with that, the courtroom took a break. But nobody moved because Ashton Kutcher, for the first time in decades, was finally telling the truth. Once the court started again, the focus turned away from parties and into something far more planned out: the money and business connections that had quietly paid for the lifestyle Ashton Kutcher and Sean Diddy Combs had built. This wasn't just about what happened behind fancy ropes. It was about what paid for it all. Kutcher had long been thought of as a smart investor, from early tech companies to huge venture capital deals. He had positioned himself as Hollywood's bridge to Silicon Valley. But as he explained the network behind it all, a pattern came out. Many of his deals overlapped with names now caught in the crossfire of Diddy's scandal. "In 2009, I started getting involved in more than just entertainment," he said. "I was introduced to company founders and fund managers, and Sean had connections most people didn't. He could open doors that even the biggest venture capitalists couldn't." He described how Diddy brought him into a circle of international money people, brand developers, and nightlife moguls. They didn't just throw parties, they built companies out of them. There were branding firms disguised as clubs, investment groups disguised as lifestyle blogs. It was marketing, surveillance, and recruitment all rolled into one. One name came up repeatedly: an anonymous investor tied to several of Kutcher's ventures, later discovered to have direct connections with Combs' overseas business arms. Financial records showed large transactions labeled only as consulting or event services, but the destinations of those funds often aligned with dates of notorious private gatherings. Ashton also admitted there were shell companies he never fully understood. "They told me it was to protect intellectual property," he said. "But looking back, it was probably to hide who was really funding what." When asked why he didn't dig deeper, Ashton looked down. "Because the money was good. Because I didn't want to be the guy who asked too many questions." The prosecution laid out a timeline of investments, from Kutcher's involvement in an exclusive tech hub in downtown LA to his partnership in a nightlife-focused app that folded shortly after receiving millions in funding. Funding that traced back to accounts now frozen under federal suspicion. Kutcher admitted he'd received updates from the app's leadership, but the user data they collected, names, locations, biometric info, had quietly been sold off. "I didn't know," Ashton said, "but maybe I should have." He also described one creepy moment in 2016 when he was shown a pitch deck for a new app developed by one of Diddy's associates. It was supposed to help talent connect directly with producers, but there was a page about discrete background checks and personality profiling that made me uncomfortable. I passed on that one. What was revealed wasn't just a story of bad parties. It was a full-on infrastructure that blurred the lines between Hollywood and darker interests. And in the middle of it all were names you'd see on magazine covers, holding awards on stage, while behind the scenes they were cashing checks signed. In silence, as the years wore on, Ashton Kutcher's circle got smaller. The bond that once united the so-called new Rat Pack began to fracture. And not because of scandal, but because of control. It became clear that within this Hollywood fraternity, loyalty had a price and betrayal came with consequences. After 2014, things changed, he said. Danny Masterson became more paranoid. Wilmer Valderrama started distancing himself, and I started hearing whispers. He wasn't just referring to media gossip. According to Kutcher, people close to the group were quietly breaking away. Not out of disagreement, but out of fear. One friend stopped showing up to everything. We thought he was just burned out. Then he called me and said, "You know too much. Get out." Kutcher claimed that after he began declining certain invitations, events, investments, dinners, things around him shifted. Projects that were greenlit suddenly went dark. PR deals fell through. And certain executives stopped returning his calls. It felt like I was being quietly frozen out. He detailed a chilling encounter in early 2017 when he ran into Diddy at a charity gala. He hugged me, told me I'd been missing out, and then he said, "You should be careful about what you don't remember." That line stuck with me. Shortly after, Ashton said he received a USB drive in a blank envelope at his office. It was footage from a party in 2012. Nothing illegal, just embarrassing. I got the message. He admitted that fear started dictating his decisions. He didn't speak up. He didn't confront anyone. He just tried to back away slowly, hoping no one would notice. But someone always did. "Every time I pulled away, something would come up," he said. "A tabloid leak, a hacked email, a threatened lawsuit. And I'd scramble to protect my name, my family." But the deeper concern was what he couldn't protect: his conscience. Ashton recounted a night in 2018 when he got a call from a friend warning him that a civil suit was coming against one of the Rat Pack members. They said, "Don't let this get to you. We'll handle it." That's when I realized this wasn't just friendship anymore. This was damage control. He began distancing himself from everyone involved, quietly moving funds, severing ties, reworking contracts. But even then, the ghosts lingered. Business associates would still bring up Diddy's name with reverence. Tech founders would drop hints about private funding rounds, and all Ashton could do was smile and nod. "I felt like I was being followed by a shadow I couldn't shake," he said. "And the worst part was, I helped build it." By 2020, Ashton Kutcher had done everything to scrub his image clean. His investments were framed as altruistic. His media appearances leaned wholesome. His family life was staged like a postcard. But under the surface, he was running. He wasn't alone. The entire entertainment world was shifting. The pandemic forced stars to retreat. Scandals began surfacing, and eventually Diddy's name was no longer whispered. It was shouted. "When I heard about the first raid," Ashton said, "I wasn't surprised. I was relieved." But the relief didn't last, because soon after came the subpoenas, the headlines, the social media accounts posting pictures long since forgotten. Kutcher's name was back in the mix, and this time no PR team could contain the damage. He described the day federal agents knocked on the door of one of his business properties. They had a warrant. They wanted access to archived footage, correspondence, travel logs. I gave them everything. He also explained why he didn't speak publicly during the initial firestorm. "I was scared, not just of the legal blowback, but of how deep it would go, who it would hurt." The biggest blow came in 2023 when footage surfaced of a party once hosted by both Kutcher and Combs in the Hamptons. It wasn't graphic, but it showed influencers being led by handlers into off-limits areas. Ashton, on camera, said only one sentence: "Just keep them calm until we start." When that clip surfaced, everything changed. "That wasn't what it looked like," he said in court. "We were running a branding shoot, or at least that's what I thought. That's what I was told." But public perception didn't care. And for a man who had built his brand on charm and trust, the hit was fatal. He lost endorsements. Tech partners began distancing themselves. Investment funds quietly removed him from board listings, and Mila, his wife, was reportedly livid. she begged me. To walk away years ago, he said. I didn't listen. Ashton described how his kids began asking why strangers yelled outside their home, why news trucks camped outside. I had to explain things I couldn't even explain to myself. It ended not with a bang but with a crumbling, a Hollywood A-lister, once seen as untouchable, now watching his empire fall brick by brick. Not because of what he did, but because of what he refused to see. And worse, what he refused to stop. Ashton's voice lowered as the conversation turned to someone he once called a brother, Danny Masterson. The courtroom felt the shift immediately. No one in the room needed reminding of Masterson's fate, convicted and sentenced. But what no one had heard before was how deeply embedded he was in this circle, how far the influence stretched to protect him, and how Ashton Kutcher was far more involved than he'd previously admitted. We came up together, Ashton began. We shared everything: work, parties, even investors. He described how the years they spent on that 70s show weren't just about filming. Off-set, it was networking. Danny was plugged into Scientology, Kutcher to tech and venture capital, Diddy to fashion and music. And at the core, they fused it all into one web of power that was designed to silence dissent. What people don't know, Ashton said, is how that power moved behind the scenes. When Danny was first accused, it wasn't just lawyers that got involved. It was favors being called in from people across every industry. I watched it happen. He recalled a particularly disturbing evening in 2017, just before Netflix dropped. Masterson from the ranch. Kutcher said a private dinner took place in the Hollywood Hills. There were execs there, producers, a few artists, and one of Diddy's lawyers. The conversation wasn't about whether Danny was innocent. It was about how to keep everything quiet. Documents surfaced showing a sequence of communications between Kutcher and his team where he offered to manage optics on Masterson's behalf. I thought I was helping a friend, he said. But I didn't realize I was helping bury the truth. The court was shown a memo from a PR firm Kutcher employed in 2018, listing a plan to flood search engines with positive news stories involving himself, Diddy, and Masterson. The campaign included celebrity endorsements, red carpet appearances, and even quiet donations to women's charities, all timed with specific legal milestones. I was scared of what would happen if the public turned on us, Ashton admitted. So I became part of the distraction machine. He paused before delivering one of the most haunting revelations yet. There was a call in 2019. Danny was panicking. He said if things went south, he'd take people with him. And when I asked who, he just said, "You know who signs the checks." I knew what he meant. Everyone in that circle did. By now it was obvious to everyone listening. This wasn't about Ashton Kutcher simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was about a man who had been close enough to the center to see the gears turning. He finally pulled back the curtain on how silence was bought and how it nearly bought his soul. Ashton described something called the cleanup crew. It wasn't one group, he said. It was a system, a strategy. There were fixers, drivers, private medics, publicists, legal shields. You'd walk into a mess, and by morning everything would be reset. People paid, stories erased, sometimes memories too. He recounted an incident in 2015 at an event overseas. A guest had a medical emergency. A security team swept in, removed her, and by dawn the room she'd been found in had been remodeled. I saw the blueprint. They covered the entire wall in mirrored glass, like it never happened. He explained that there were 3 tiers of silence: the hush fee, the job offer, and the threat. Some people got a new car, others got booked in a new series, and some just disappeared from the invite list. Financial records were presented showing Ashton had authorized payments through one of his LLCs to a media consultant who had coincidentally also worked on damage control for a Diddy-led fashion campaign around the same time. When asked why he did it, Ashton's answer was simple: because I didn't know how to escape. He revealed that by 2021, he began quietly withdrawing from certain ventures. He severed ties with Diddy's associates, closed dormant businesses, even deleted a decade's worth of photos from cloud archives. But the deeper he tried to retreat, the more people questioned his silence. "You ever tried to delete a part of your life?" he asked. "The problem is, someone else always has a copy." He spoke about a chilling message sent to his wife Mila in early 2022, a photo of her with their children, captioned with a line from a contract she'd never seen. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder that even if you leave the party never leaves you. He ended with Kutcher explaining why he was finally speaking out. "Because I got tired of erasing myself," he said. "Because the longer I stayed quiet, the more I became one of them." Ashton Kutcher sat still for a long moment before speaking again. It was as if he knew what Part 9 truly meant. Not just for the courtroom, but for the legacy of everyone still watching. "This isn't about saving face," he said. "This is about saving whatever part of myself I still recognize." He was asked one final question. If given the chance, would he go back and change anything? "I would have walked away," he answered. "Back in 2005, the first time I saw the door closed behind me at one of those parties, I should have left. But I didn't. I stayed. I played along. I smiled on carpets and pitched apps while people got hurt behind the scenes." He admitted he had sent letters to some of the victims recently. "Not to ask for forgiveness," he said. "Just to tell them, I see it now, all of it." Ashton turned to the judge before stepping down. "Your Honor," he said, "if there's anything this court needs from me, emails, records, names, I won't fight it. I've done enough fighting for the wrong people." A hush swept over the room. Even Diddy didn't flinch, because at that moment the courtroom wasn't filled with celebrities or moguls. It was filled with the echoes of what they'd all tried to bury. Outside, the world was watching. And whether you believed Ashton was a hero trying to atone, or just another guilty man with a polished smile, one thing was clear. The curtain was finally being pulled on the myths of fame, and what stood behind it was far uglier than anyone wanted to admit.